Well, good evening, Hamza.
Hi Jack, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thank you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having
No,
me.
no, I've been wanting you for ages, and I think I've reached out on Instagram, but you were jet setting off to Africa at the time.
Yeah, that's right. You said, "Can you do this weekend?" I think I was like, "Funny question. I'm just about to leave off to Africa, so hopefully when I come back, you can give me a little reminder, and I'll be happy to be on your show."
How was the trip? Was it good? What were you? Can you say what you were filming, or is it top
Um,
secret?
yeah, I can give you a broad idea. So we were filming the African migration, and we were getting lovely
Ah,
portraits.
awesome.
So we were in Africa, the motherland. If anyone's recommending it or it's on their bucket list, definitely go. Um, and safari is nothing like what you imagine, but everything like you would imagine. Um,
Okay.
it's a wonderful place to be. So
Is that your first time doing the migration, like going out and seeing that?
yeah, so I'm born and bred in Africa. I'm born in Sudan, and I grew up there. But the migration doesn't really pass by us. In southern Sudan, maybe, and in northern Kenya. But we were over in Tanzania, and it was just phenomenal. Wildebeest and zebras until your eye can see, like as far as your eye can see. There's just black dots and black and white stripes everywhere, and it was just
Wow.
wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Awesome. It's just one of those kind of, like you say, bucket list animal encounters, isn't it?
Yeah, you see it on TV and you see it on like the big documentaries, and David Attenborough's voice is talking over it, and it's just nothing like being there. It gives you a very good inkling on what you're going to see, but nothing like when you see it with your own eyes. So highly recommend it for
Yeah,
people.
I bet that's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So you studied at the University of Nottingham. When was that? Is that a few years ago now? I'm guessing.
Well, I did my master's there, but
That
I
was it. That
studied
was
in
it.
Bangor University. I did
Oh,
a
okay,
management
okay.
conservation course there. I think it was 2008. I did that, and yeah, phenomenal. Really loved the university. Bangor's been so good to me, and a lot of people who did the zoology course, some have gone on to do stuff with animals, some haven't, but for me, I think it was such a strong course, very well designed to allow me to be where I am now as a wildlife camera operator, but also just for the animal conservation side and animal behavior, understanding animals and knowing how to at least go into the conservation side of things, and also to use my platform as a camera operator to tell the story of conservation. So really big kudos to Bangor University, and thank you to them really.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know. So the master's course that you did at Nottingham. So I teach on that now. I do a little
Ah,
part-time teaching. So I was talking to David and Steve, and I said, "Have you got any dirt on Hamza that I can bring up during this?" And there was nothing too incriminating. The best they could come up with is that you found an enormous sea snail rock pooling.
all right. I can't even remember
Can you
that.
not? Now
No.
they sent me a picture, so I know you did it. So a sea snail
Oh,
because it's a fish. It's called a sea snail, but it's a fish. And
right. Okay.
I'll send you the picture just to make sure. But yeah, it was.
Yeah.
They said it was you, and the other one was you did a project with chimps, and you knew every chimp intimately, more or less.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was for my undergrad.
Oh, okay.
I did a study where I studied how chimpanzee the males become the alphas, and everyone thinks it's just beat everyone up and then they make you the alpha, but it's actually not. The male, the underdog, the one that's coming through, he'll go around and he'll groom all the females and become pally with them, so that when war kicks off, and I mean war because these chimps like digits are missing and like they're just fighting and biting. Canines are huge. So when this war eventually erupts, the females then side on with the male that was nice to them. And he's the clever one rather than just being the brawns and I'm like, I'm just going to beat you up kind of thing. So it was a really lovely dynamic to be able to see that. And you have to sit and observe these chimps for long hours. And slowly, you start realizing who the characters are, who's going to be funny. And yeah, you'll know them one by one, name for name. So yeah, it's
It,
lovely.
So they have different personalities today. They've got that kind of
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure, for sure. So we had euro. So they're all named after money. So like we had tuppence, sixpence, euro, shilling. And Euro was this young female that was still kind of like adolescent. And she'd go up to Sixpence, who was the alpha male at the time, and she'll raise her hands really high in the air and just like slap him on his back. And he'd wake up dazed, like going, who on earth is gonna like beat me up? And turns around and finds this little teenager. And males can't really beat up the children in chimpanzee society. So then he's really frustrated and he was like, the nearest chimp, he just takes it out on them. So it's really funny. Like she knew, she was like, had him wrapped around her finger.
Yeah, it's like
And
immune.
I'm sure it was her dad, but he can't do much about it because if he touches her, all the ladies, all the mums will go crazy and just beat the alpha male. But yeah, it
That's
was
crazy.
lovely. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really lovely to see that side of things and record it all. So yeah,
Yeah, spend enough time with them, you're going to pick up stuff like that, aren't you?
indeed.
And you've done some stills as well as video. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I always ask this whenever I've got a camera operator on. Have you got a preference? Do you prefer stills? I'm guessing video is more the kind of work that you do now. But if you had a choice, would you rather do stills or would you rather do the video side?
Um, that's a very good question, Jack. I would
Thank you.
say I started off in stills, and I've still got a love for stills because there's nothing like capturing that split-second shot that everybody goes wow for, you know?
Mm.
And you can make these amazing documentaries, these blue chips, or have an input in them, and you'll have a 10-15 second in there, and people go, that's really lovely. But it's nothing like capturing that still image that's wonderful. But my bread and butter at the moment is film work. And you have to have the photography side of things, knowing that side to be translated over to the film. It's very difficult to suddenly just get into film. You need to understand the stills side of things. So I recommend everybody to pick up a camera, be a stills. If you want to be a wildlife camera man or woman, operator doing video, pick up a camera that stills, work with that, and then tell a story. So one pretty picture is wonderful, it's great, and it shows your eye and composition and everything. But tell the story of what you're trying to show, and you can easily translate that into videography. And that's kind of what I found hard. Is I used to just take lovely images and then tried to do the same with film, but it just wasn't working because I couldn't tell the story, and that's where it takes a bit of time to learn that. But yeah, I started off with film and started off with stills, and still will always be in my heart as the easy thing to go to. You can take a picture by the end of that day, the public can see it. Whereas when I do the video, there's a lot of hours behind it, editing and choosing which clip and how to stitch them all together. And normally other people take care of that for me, which is nice, but it takes time as well. And sometimes I even forget what I shot because, it's already been done. And like 2 years later, it comes out and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that shot. Just whereas with stills, it stays in your mind straight away. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you're saying all that. Whenever I get a camera up on and they do a bit of both, nearly all of them would like to do stills because it's more simplistic, I guess, and that's nice that it's simplistic. But the
yeah,
reality is, it's very difficult to make a full-time living just doing stills. Whereas I
indeed.
think filmmaking, there are a lot more options, and I don't know if it's easier, but there's definitely more ways to make a career out of it.
That's right. Yeah. So with the amount of gear, for example, if you're a more vulnerable person, you can't take heavy loads on your back and you can't hike long distances. The the gear for stills is a lot easier to do it with rather than video. So if you're doing video, most of the time, 99% of the time, you're on a tripod. If you're not on a tripod, you're on a stabilized gimbal that needs some form of like transport, which are a quad bike, a truck, or something along those lines. So it's a lot of heavy gear to carry around. Whereas still, like you said, it's very simple. You click the image, you can do a quick edit, and done. It's lovely.
Yeah, it's a nice quick process, isn't it? And so you mentioned about wildlife filmmaking. What would you say are the main challenges of wildlife filmmaking?
Storytelling is a
Okay.
big challenge. So getting a beautiful shot of an otter feeding is wonderful, but what's it doing? Like, where does this fit in your story about otters? What are you trying to tell? And it takes a long, long time. It sometimes it's not successful, uh, which is annoying. Whereas if you take a still of an otter feeding, for example, it's a lovely image. You can show that straight away. With uh, videography, it takes a bit of time to get all the shots that you need. So the waking up early, getting the time lapse of the sunrise, and you know, finding the otter, then photographing it. And if it gets scared, it moves away, and you've lost some of your shots. Whereas if you with stills, you've got that shot, and if it moves away, you've still got the shot. You kind of have to tell that story, and that's really, really difficult, finding those stories, and then finding a story that's not been told already. Um, we've all seen lions catching zebras in the African savannah, but how can you make it interesting? Whether that's new filming techniques or a new interesting story. So maybe the lionesses have all died and he's got to look after the cubs, and that's never been done before. So then people are tuned and interested. So it's finding the story, telling the story correctly, and then just the patience. Everything takes so long. Some of these big documentaries take 4 years to film, and you've just kind of got to be patient throughout it all and try and like stitch it all together. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It must be great when you've been doing those sort of things. I mean, you said like you've shot something and you forget about it. If it's a 4 year process and you're like, oh yeah, I did that. It must be quite nice to kind of see that
yeah,
pop up.
yeah, it is, and it's actually kind of it's a nice feeling because you kind of go, oh, that's a cool shot, you know. But then sometimes if you're learning a new technique, you kind of go, who on earth shot that? And, oh, hang on, that's me, you know. And it shows how much you've improved in those 4 years to what the new techniques and like a lot of things is happening now in the wildlife filming world. So thermal imaging, drones, long lens, it's all underwater. It's improving so quickly that you forget where you were 4 years ago, and then you get a sudden surprise. If it's good, you were like, oh, that's good. And if you look back at it, you're like, oh, I could have done better now if I
Yeah.
had the technology of today. So yeah, it's kind of nice looking back as well. You reminisce on what you did and what you got up to.
Because I guess as well, with the bigger series, normally, as I understand it, you don't get to keep the footage, do you? So, say if you're filming for a blue chip, so when you're saying, "Oh, I haven't seen that before," people might think, "Oh, but you shot it, you can see it," but you send the cards off, and that's it, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
you don't really
yeah.
get to see that again.
That's right. So you can have a quick look at the back of back of camera when you're actually there. So the action's finished, you can kind of quick look. Yeah, it was in focus. I feel happy. Then you literally hand the card over to the producer or the director, and then they take it from there. And it goes through all the process of color correcting, editing, and eventually see the final product. And if you're lucky, you get to see it before it airs. But most of the time, you kind of sit back with everyone else. You tune in at 8 o'clock, you put the TV on, and then you go, oh, so that's the shot that they took from mine. Or and
Yeah.
sometimes you go, but I shot so much more. Where did all that go? And that's part of the industry. We're always trying to become better and better. So an average shot is no longer needed. We need more than average. We need to surpass ourselves each time as camera operators. So yeah, a lot of the times I don't get to see the shot again until it's near done or completely done. And
Yeah.
it's a good surprise. It's a good surprise.
Yeah, I guess because you're like, oh, I hope they use because I've done bits before and I'm like, oh, they're gonna use loads of this. This is gonna be great, and then it's like 20 seconds or whatever. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
bastards.
yeah, exactly,
But
exactly.
what can you do? But I guess that's
Yeah,
telly. It's
and
telly.
and the tough thing is, me and you know how hard it is that we took to get that shot. So we were out there for 2 weeks getting that shot, on getting everything in between in those 2 weeks, and they only use that 5 seconds, or they only use
Yeah.
that 10 seconds, and then you kind of go, but what about the rest of the 2 weeks?
Yeah.
But then they're trying to surpass. Is that the word? Trying to improve every time from the shot that they got last time. So
Yeah,
it's very good.
yeah. I don't begrudge him too much. I'm just happy. I'm just happy for the work half the time. But yeah, I know exactly
Same,
what you're talking about.
same.
So when did you make the switch from behind the camera to in front of it? Because I imagine some camera operators that would fill them with dread. So
Yeah.
was that something that you kind of you always wanted to do, or was it like, right, Hamza, we want you in front of the camera now? Like, how did that kind of
Um, yeah,
pan
that's
out?
another good question. I was always behind the camera, and I never really thought of being in front of camera. And I always admired people like Steve Irwin, God rest his soul, and
Yeah,
today
same here. Yeah, I loved him.
I want to do what these guys do, and if I can't do what they do, I'll be the cameraman that films them doing what they do.
Okay.
So I never really had the thought of being a presenter, but slowly, being on these shoots, one of my friends was like, "You know what? I think you'd be great on camera." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't have the body type, or the charisma, or something along those lines." But she was like, "No, no, don't worry." And she contacted her friend who was doing a story about up and coming wildlife cameramen and women. And she asked me to come down. They did a little bit of filming with me, and all of a sudden, the next thing I know is I'm sitting on the one show on the sofa with these amazing people, and it basically took off from there. So my agent then saw me because one of her clients was on TV at the time and really wanted me to meet her. And she said, "Look, I think you've got a personality for TV. Let's see where this goes." And yeah, and that was it really. And it took off from there to being Ranger Hamza on CBBS with my own show called Let's Go for a Walk, to then doing more country file stuff, doing more one show stuff. And eventually I got my Channel 4 documentary, Scotland, My Home in the Wild. And it's just phenomenal
Yeah,
to be able to
it's great
see
that
that.
it's working
Yeah,
out for you. It's really good to
yeah,
see you doing all that. Um,
yeah.
and you mentioned CBeebies. So how did you find presenting wildlife to a mostly young audience? Like, did you have to do anything different, or do you just kind of treat them the same? Or
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing is, yes, they are children, but don't treat them like children. Don't dumb
okay,
everything down for them. Speak to them as if they are teenagers, adults. Sometimes you have to simplify things just for them to understand it. But I think kids are way more open to understanding things than some adults do. They have much more of a creative mind. If you give a child a crayon and a pen, sorry, a crayon and a paper, they'll draw these elaborate designs, and you're like, "Wow, this is beautiful." But as we get older, we get taught that this is no longer useful. Like the creativity side of things gets subsided, and we have to, like, right, focus on being an adult, paying your bills, looking after your kids. And this is where artists still keep that little spark that they had when they were younger. So for me, if I can spark a child's mind thinking about Mother Nature or the wildlife, they can take that on to the future. And I give an example of a child who is scared of spiders. The only reason they're scared of spiders is because he's taught to be scared of spiders, whether that's by his parents or older siblings or something along those lines. But on my show, you see kids that have these little jars with magnifying glasses on top, bug boxes basically, and they are super happy to go over and pick up a spider and put it in and have a look. And to me, that just fills me with joy, because at the end of the day, the children are our future. They're the ones who are going to take the baton on from where I leave Mother Nature and the conservation side of things, and they're going to take it on and be our next politicians and be our next prime ministers. So if I can get them to think about nature just once a day, it's wonderful. And a lot of times, if children are the ones who are happy to make the change, the adults, the parents, and the guardians, they will be happy to do that change for them. For instance, one kid who goes, "Mum, all I want is free range eggs. I don't want any farmed eggs. I want free range eggs." And because the child stipulated that, the mother then said, "Well, okay, if he wants that, I can easily give that ability." But it's the mom who's paying the bills or the dad who's paying the groceries that has that choice at the end. And because it's their child who wanted it, the parents are then happy to do so. So it's a win-win situation. If you get kids outdoors and loving nature, it makes the world a much better place, really.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. I like that analogy of just sort of like lighting the spark on them. That's a
Yeah.
good way of thinking about it, I guess. And
Yeah.
you're now living, so I think we talked about this briefly before we started, but you're living in the west coast of Scotland. So that must be an amazing place to live. I was just about to say what drew you there, but I'm guessing that's an easy one to answer.
Well, yeah, kind of. So most people think it's the wildlife that got me here, but it's actually a university friend of mine who's been begging me to come on this holiday with them, family holiday that they've been doing for 30 years. Um, and eventually I went down to their house in Yorkshire, and I saw a picture that they took of a stag. And I said, "Whoa, where did you get the shot?" And they said, "Oh, we've got it in the west coast of Scotland, this holiday that we've been asking you to go on." And we took it with our mobile phones. It was just outside of the car. I was like, "Right, are you going again this year? If so, can I please come along?" And I just absolutely fell in love. So to get to where I am, you have to go through Glencoe.
Ah,
And it's just phenomenal. I've never seen mountains like this. Studying in North Wales, I saw a lot of mountains that were beautiful, but nothing like Glencoe. And looking out the window, I see my first ever wild stag high up on the hill. I'm talking about 500, 600 meters up the mountain. And I was like, "Please stop, let me take a photo. I'm never going to see this again." And they were like, "Just come on, get in the car, wait until we get to show you this place and you'll understand how much wildlife's there." And again, lo and behold, as soon as I was here, my mouth was just to the floor. The amount of wildlife that's here is phenomenal. And 2 weeks later, I was back for good. I basically spent a week convincing my parents I'd like to move out. I'm going to move out. And they go, "Okay, fine. It's a phase he's going through. Give him like 2 weeks of living in a tent. He'll be back again." And I spent the second week preparing my car to be my home for the next, God knows, I didn't know how long. It turned out to be nearly 9 months that I lived in my car before I found a little tiny spot to live here. But that's how much this place means to me. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. And that was nearly 10 years ago now.
all right.
Yeah.
So you've been up there a while then.
Yeah, yeah. I've been here. I got my house only 3.5 years ago,
Yeah.
but I was moving around. So I lived in a caravan with no heating and running water. I lived in my car for 9 months. I lived in another caravan. But that's only because I love the area. I didn't mind kind of having the primitive lifestyle and suffering with the cold in the wintertime, um, to then eventually being able to photograph basking sharks, the aurora, otters, eagles. There's even killer whales that come past. So Jonko, the famous orca, and Aquarius, they come past where I live. And it's just like being able to be in a place where there's the potential of seeing orcas, which I've seen twice in the 10 years that I've been here, and wildcats. It's just, it's unheard of. And only because this place is so remote, and there's only about 150 of us who live in the village, it allows for the wildlife to thrive and be here as such. So yeah, it's a phenomenal place, and the wildlife did draw me up here for sure.
Have you got a favorite subject up there?
I love my eagles. I
Ah,
absolutely love eagles. Just because from where I sit in the morning, I look out the window and there'll be two eagles sat in the winter, the whole of winter. They'll be sat there, and they kind of use that spot to hunt from. So you can see them constantly hunting ducks, and they come back. But we've got the otters and the eagles, and all the deer you can even ask for. But I really do love my eagles. They're just something special about seeing them soar in the sky. And I always think if reincarnation is true, I'd love to come back as an eagle.
is it sea eagles or golden that you get there?
We get both. So the ones that
Ah,
sit outside my house are the whitetails, the
yeah.
seagull. But just around the corner, I've got a nest of golden eagles as well,
Oh,
and they're lovely.
fantastic.
Yeah, and so I know the four birds individually. So in the sky, I can be able to tell which one's which. And yeah, they're just so we've got Lawrence and Agatha. They're the white-tailed eagles. I've named them. And then we've got Lady and Assassin. Assassin only because he is just a machine at bringing back to the chicks. And yeah, he brings back foxes. So at first I thought it was a fox cub, but it's actually a fox through the binoculars.
Are they big enough to take an adult fox? Are
Yeah,
they?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a Goldie male that brought it
Wow.
back, which is like crazy to think of the size comparisons between the two. So a whitetail, I can expect that, or a female Goldie, but this was a male Goldie that brought it back. That's why I call him Assassin. So yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a bucket list species. I've seen golden eagles on captivity, obviously, but I've never seen a wild one in the UK. So it's on my to-do list. It's one of those things of getting
Ah,
around to it, but I'd
right, you
love
should
to.
come around when lockdown's finished. You should come around.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That would be cool to just to even not even talk about filming, just see one through some bins
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
incredible. That would be really good. And
yeah.
you've just done Scotland, My Life in the Wild with Channel 4. So what was
Yeah.
that like? That must have been amazing working on that.
Yeah, just absolutely out of this world. So um, I never thought something like this. So first of all, I'd like to thank Channel 4 for giving me this opportunity. Um, but also to be able to film it in a place that I love and to show the animals that I really care about and have that platform, and not just a 10-minute or a 15-minute piece. A full hour was just, mind-boggling for me. It's it's a story that I've always wanted to tell, and how beautiful my village is in comparison to their relationship with the wildlife. So yes, there is a little bit of friction, but also there's a lot of harmony. So the people who have chickens understand that there's pine martens here, and if they lose one or two chickens to a pine marten, they go, "Oh well, that's nature as such." So it's not like we hate the pine marten, let's get rid of them. No, we kind of have to live with them because the pine martens were initially here. And same with the eagles and the deer and everything else. So I really, after spending time in this village, I figured this out and thought this is a wonderful story to try and tell. So Channel 4 gave me this opportunity. And I've been filming for that piece for probably about 6 months. And then they joined me on the last month of filming, where I'm going through my trials and tribulations with the white-tailed eagle. And yeah, to be able to put my village on the map and to show the beauty of it and to show other people what can be achieved if we live in harmony with Mother Nature, was great. And also to be able to have because people love the 10 minutes at the end of these blue chip documentaries, these amazing Attenborough documentaries, as people call them. The 10 minutes at the end of how they do it is fascinating to people, and more people are tuned in to see that. So to have a full hour long of that, and they see me behind the camera filming the stuff, I think it hit people, and they kind of go, "Oh, this is great! We really love this." So yeah, it was amazing, and Channel 4 are asking me to do more, so hopefully we'll enroll it out over Scotland and try and cover a lot of more ground, like rather than just the West Coast for me, go and see like the Cairngorms, the East Coast, and even try and like dip my toes into the sea, venture to see what's under the water, because it's out of sight doesn't mean it should be out of mind as such. And
Yeah.
there's a big part that the oceans play in Mother Nature, carbon footprint, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll watch this space basically.
Yeah, that'd be great. I bet people can't wait for that to come out. And if people want to, because I think this by the time this podcast comes out, this will already been out, but it should be on 4OD or more or what
Yeah,
more
I
for
think
whatever.
more for,
More
yes,
for,
more
yeah,
for.
yeah.
And yeah, just Google it, and Scotland, My Home in the Wild. It should be easy to find, really. Or just type in my name. I think the first thing that comes up is that documentary.
Great stuff, buddy. Well, look, it's been fascinating chatting to you and kind of hearing your thoughts on it all. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to seeing you when you come up to Scotland.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely take you up on that. So you might regret saying that, but I'll be up there.
No,
I'm going to see some
not at all,
goldies.
Steve. Not at all. Not at all.
Take care, Hamza. Cheers, buddy.
See you soon. Bye bye.